A journey through time to discover the vanished Caribbean customs. The vibrant cultures flourishing with ancient traditions and classic wisdom. But what exactly happened to the sparkling beauty of Caribbean cultures? Dynamic cultures with distinctive traditions existed in the lovely Caribbean. People danced to upbeat music, feasted on mouth-watering dishes, and celebrated colourful festivals. But then the Dutch arrived, and Caribbean cultures took a new turn. So join us on this challenging exploration to uncover the cultural exchange in the Caribbean. It all began in the early 17th century. The daring Dutch set out for the Caribbean in a world of unknown seas. This had an everlasting impact on Caribbean history. The vast Atlantic was traversed by Dutch ships in search of trade. They journeyed to the Caribbean by battling storms and navigating uncharted waters in search of riches and success. Attracted by the abundant resources, the Dutch encountered many indigenous groups with distinct customs. The Dutch Caribbean islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curaçao, Sint Maarten, Saba, and St. Eustatius, eventually formed the Netherlands Antilles in 1954 after the Dutch colonized these islands in the 17th century. For European traders, these islands were a lucrative source of commodities like corn, sugar, cotton, tobacco, indigo, salt, coffee, oil, and slaves. Expanding their presence with an enterprising spirit, they left an indelible mark on the Dutch Caribbean islands. The islands were under the Dutch West India Company's direct control, encompassing colonies in the Caribbean and the Guineas. Dutch influence boomed in the trade as they established bustling ports like Willemstad in Curaçao, Oranjestad in Aruba, and Philipsburg in Sint Maarten. These prospering commercial hubs drew traders and ships from all over the world. Warfare and other violent clashes with the native population, like the Taínos, Caribs, and Arawaks, eventually became a daily sport with the expansion of the Dutch colony. The indigenous peoples were forced to sell their territories. As the Dutch settled, a fascinating intermingling of cultures began to unfold. The Dutch colonizers spun a web around the Taino, Arawak, and Carib native tribes. Colonizers traded tools, textiles, and weapons, introducing new technologies while receiving local food, pottery, and crafts. The Dutch settlers and native tribes exchanged farming methods, healing plants, and navigational knowledge, resulting in cultural fusion. The tribes adopted Dutch customs by fusing their traditions, and the Dutch incorporated Caribbean elements. The colonizers considered their way of life superior to the people of the Caribbean. They sought to impose their own language and religion on them. They promoted their Dutch language by establishing schools and institutions where their language was emphasized. It was aimed at facilitating communication, governance, and integration in their colonial framework. Dutch missionaries enforced Protestant Christianity on Caribbean people through church establishment and cultural assimilation. While some embraced Dutch and Protestantism, others held on to their languages and beliefs. This led to a unique linguistic and religious expressions shaped by the unification of Dutch and Caribbean cultures. But due to this, many of the traditional languages and religions of the Caribbean were lost. The Dutch established thriving trading relationships with ports like Willemstad and Oranjestad. These served as vital hubs for commerce. This fueled their economic growth through the exchange of goods, including slaves. They introduced new cash crops like sugarcane, tobacco, and indigo. These plantations were significant sources of wealth for the Dutch. In need of a workforce, colonizers enslaved the indigenous population. This tore families apart and inflicted lasting wounds through brutal conditions and social disruption. Dutch colonization disrupted agricultural practices and regional economies. The tactics that the colonizers used were extremely lucrative for them, yet harmful to the local communities and their ecosystems. The lasting legacy of Dutch colonialism is still evident in Caribbean cultures. Western practices have replaced many of the lost traditions and customs. Additionally, socioeconomic disparities continue to persist. Native populations still experience worse health outcomes, lower levels of education, and less access to job opportunities. Moreover, the Dutch also left their architectural imprint on the Caribbean. The charming forts, mesmerizing churches, and recognizable gabled houses of Willemstad are tangible examples of their contribution. Their traces can be found in Curaçao, Aruba, Sint Maarten, and beyond. Amidst hope for revival, indigenous communities reclaim cultural heritage through language, festivals, or initiatives, fostering pride and understanding. But how could Caribbean people have protected their identity? What lessons can we learn from their struggle to protect their sense of identity? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more on Dutch colonial history.